Howdy. I'm going to show you how to make a wire armature for using in sculpture, either paper mache or clay. I like to use oil clay in my classes or paper mache, either one. All I'm using is a wire. This is a 2-foot length of 18 gauge dark annealed wire. Comes off a spool, 5-pound spool, cost me about 20 bucks. At an art store. You can get a little cheaper online. 2 feet, roughly. Cut it in half to make 2 1-foot lengths. Sometimes if the edges get a little bit bent, I'll just bend them back. Take one piece and I fold it in half. And I make a loop at the bottom. Just a small loop at the bottom. Down here. And then I'm going to squeeze, I'm going to kind of twist the 2 sides around each other. So the 2 sides are out here and here, and I'm going to twist. You can twist the bottom while holding the top. You can twist the top while holding the bottom, whichever. Either way. With the 18 gauge, which is a little bit thicker, it can be a little bit harder to do than with the 20 gauge. I really like the 20 gauge for smaller sculptures and the 18 for bigger ones. But, you know, whatever, use what you have. What I'm doing is I twist the body until it's about a little bit less than half the size of the whole thing top to bottom, the whole armature top to bottom, because I want to also make a hip. I make a bend in the wire, maybe ½ an inch out. I'll make another bend in the wire, another ½ inch out. And I'll make a couple of feet. The feet, doesn't matter how big they are, it's just really, they're just going to be stuck into something, like maybe they'll be stuck into a piece of cardboard or stuck into a Dixie cup or stuck into whatever, styrofoam, so you don't have to worry too much about the feet. Maybe just give it a little bit of a knee, about halfway, or bend it in the knee. That's the first piece. It'll look like this. The second piece is going to be for the sides of the body and the arms. So the second piece of wire also needs to be folded in half so that the 2 ends meet as evenly as possible. Perfect doesn't matter. Perfect doesn't exist. You take this piece and you can hook one of the legs. So you could actually kind of do that. You're going to pinch right where the 2 wires come together. You can see where I'm pinching it. And then I'm going to take each wire and wrap it one time around the hip. So I'm going to go around like that. Taking this wire, going down and around. And so it's attached right at the hip. I'll show you from the side. Down and up again. So that the sculpture, now the second wire, is attached at the hip. I just wound it around one time. One time is really all you need. Now these are going to be the 2 sides of the body and the arms. Let me show you an arm. We're going to want a little bit of a neck. So right here is the head. Leave a little bit of room for the neck. The side of the body can come straight up. Bend maybe ½ inch or so, 1/4 inch below the head, so give yourself a little bit of room for a neck. And then you twist it around one time to make yourself the side of the body and the arm. Do the other side. Twist it around one time. And now I have a wire armature. If you want, you can, I like to fold it right where the shoulders are. Now, the hands are supposed to come to mid-thigh on a human being. These hands right now that I made come a little bit lower. The wire that you use, it might be too long, it might be too short. If it's a little bit too long, I'll just kind of bend the hands up. You don't really need to do that, but just that way the hands are the right proportion to the rest of the body. You don't end up with giant arms and little legs. That's what our primate cousins have. And here you have your wire armature. Now sometimes I like to stick it into a cup, such as a Dixie cup. Dixie cups, the only problem is if you want to pose your sculpture in kind of a wide stance, the other leg won't really fit. But you can have a variety of different kinds of cups and boxes and things for your students to pose their sculpture, their wire armatures on. Put an arm up, put an arm down, pose it however. Maybe look at some public monuments. If you're in Philadelphia, you can look at philart.net, which has a tremendous amount of public art, public monuments, sculptures, gargoyles. Or you could look at Museum Without Walls audio. And all I did there was I just poked the feet into the cup. You can just use a dab of glue to secure them in place. You have your wire armature sculpture. I'll show you, sometimes I'll use just a tiny bit of paper mache also to hold them into place. So what I do is put a tray, a little bit of water, some glue, some newspaper, take a few pieces of newspaper, rip them into long strips. I like strips that are about as long as my finger. They're easier to hold when you're trying to apply the paper mache. And with the glue, I don't know, 3 parts glue to 1 part water or something like that. I just kind of go by the feel of it, but you just need a little bit of water to thin out the glue. Otherwise the glue's too sticky. You can use a paintbrush, you can use your finger, however messy you feel like getting. So this is probably a perfect proportion. I don't know it, I don't care. I just do it to thin the glue out. And I'm just mixing the glue and water together, deciding if I need any more water or any more glue. It's too thin. I want it a little bit runny, so it'll really make the newspaper wet, but also sticky. That's fine. So first I ripped it into strips. Now I'm going to dip, flip, dip again, and now I strip it. So I kind of pinch it and pull down. Pinch it and pull down. Pinch it and pull down. It has plenty of glue and water on it. It doesn't need to be dripping wet. So I just try to pull off as much glue and water until it's no longer dripping wet. The first thing I do when I start putting the paper mache on my figure is I like to attach where the feet are to the cup. Take a strip of newspaper, maybe I'll fold it. The main thing is just to really make sure there's a bond between the wire and the cup, or the wire and the shoebox, or the wire and the piece of cardboard, whatever you're using. I just kind of smush it around, make sure they really attach well. I'll do it with both feet. Try not to drop it on the floor. And then I'll usually stop there, hang it up to dry, come back another day. Get off me, thing. There we go. Nothing has to be perfect with paper mache. It's a messy and cheap art material. And cheap is really one of the most wonderful things about it. Because when your school district cuts your budget, and they have no money to pay for anything, glue, newspaper, water, wire, about as cheap as you can get. And from there, maybe I'll find a nail and I'll just hang it up to dry. And once it's dry, then I can worry about the rest of the sculpture. Because it's hard to work on it as it's falling over and it doesn't want to stay. Another way you can do this, you can take a piece of cardboard and poke it through the corrugation. If you look closely at a piece of cardboard, you'll see that it has lines on it, on one side usually. What I do is I'll take the feet and I'll poke them into the cardboard, but not all the way through. I'll kind of poke it diagonal, and once it's already poked through the very top layer of the cardboard, I'll push it. See, it doesn't come out the other side. I'll do that with both feet. It can be tricky. A lot of times I'll help students with this stage. And that way it stays up better than with a Dixie cup. And that way, if you want to do a whole lot of paper mache the first day, you can. Maybe stuff the belly so it doesn't end up pancake thin. A lot of students like to do pancake thin paper mache sculptures. Not because they're bad, but because they haven't been shown how. Stuff the belly. Put some paper mache around it. Some people like to wrap it with tape first. Some years I do that, some years I don't. But, you know, I used to do stick armatures, so without the sides of the body. I like this better, because this way the sculptures don't end up completely thin. They have a thickness to them, they have a human thickness to them. And I don't have to worry about that anymore. There's other parts of the body which are harder to get thick enough. But I don't have to worry about that part anymore. So now I'm just making it grip. Attaching the paper mache to the sculpture. And voila. When you're done, you can put a coat of gesso on it. Then before you paint it, you can mount it on something else. The reason I like these cups or the shoe boxes or something is it's kind of like a built-in base. So the sculpture isn't just flat. And sometimes the pieces of cardboard will tend to warp a little bit when you're painting them. So it's nice to have a built-in base when you're already just starting. And that is all. Have fun making your paper mache sculptures or oil clay, whichever your preference. Okay, bye.